Hey guys, Gary J here, and today we're making a sundial, and we're also calculating our directions from east to west. If we know east to west, then we can also know north to south. And so if you're ever in a situation where you're out in the middle of the woods, this is a great bushcraft type of help that will aid you in finding your directions if you don't have a compass. Okay, number one, we have a pie plate here, and we have a stick in the middle here, which is just a Chinese chopstick, basically. And on this pie plate here, I've marked it here and here, and I've made a circle around this plate with a non-erasable magic marker so that the plate stays in the same place. I have these two rocks on here to hold it down because it can get a little windy. And so I know that my plate's going to be in the same spot every time I look at it as we make this sun clock here. Normally you'll be doing this on the ground, but I think it may be easier to understand if you are looking at it from this position here. So, pie plate, hold close to the center of it. These circles around here, don't pay attention to those. And this stick right here is an important part right here in the center, because when you look at this stick right here, some call that a mnemon, and the study of mnemonics. Mnemonics is study of sundials, and this is a mnemon, this stick right here, basically, because it casts a shadow and it follows the sun. Now the sun is over here, okay, and it's 9 a.m. So what I've done here is mark the shadow at 9 a.m. And that's where it was at 9 a.m. And I've got a little mark up here for 9 a.m. Now, after doing that, about every 15 minutes, what we're going to do to calculate what direction is east and west is pretty simple. When we're here, we have a shadow, and what we do is take a pen and we put a mark at the very end of that shadow, like right here. A little while ago that shadow was right here, and I put a mark at the very end of that shadow. And so in 15 minutes we'll put a mark at the end of this shadow here. Another 15 minutes we'll put another mark at the end of the shadow. You don't put it down here or here. You put it at the very tip where the shadow ends, Okay? So every 15 minutes you do that. And after 4 or 5 times of doing that every 15 minutes, you'll be able to see you'll be able to measure this from here to here with a stick, a straight stick, and it will be pointing to the east, and this way over here will be to the west. Okay, and that'll tell you pretty accurately east and west, like a compass would. Okay, it's not precision as a compass, but it's very, very close. So that's the purpose of that. One thing about the mnemon is that this stick right here, I live in middle Georgia, which is about 33 degrees latitude upward. So you have to point this stick not vertical, but about 30 degrees off of vertical, because we live at 33 degree latitude. If you lived at 40 degrees latitude, you would want to point this stick at about 40 degrees. You may say, well, how do I know what 30 degrees is? Well, it's pretty simple. If you look at the numbers on a clock, you got 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. Well, if this was one big clock right here, and straight up is 12 o'clock, and if you look at 11 on the clock, 11 is actually 30 degrees to the left of 12. If you look at 10, that's 60 degrees to the left of 12. So each number on the clock represents 30 degrees. So I know that looking at it, and if this is vertical, this looks like 11 o'clock right here. So I set the stick at 11 degrees, which gives me 30 degrees to the left here. Another thing too, in order to do this correctly, you have to the way the stick is leaning, you have to point that to north. And on my iPhone, I have a app for compass, which is easy to download and free, and it'll point north. Is pointing this direction right here on my phone, okay, on my compass. You can use any compass. So find true north and aim the stick toward true north, okay. And actually, a compass itself is a tad off of true north because of magnetic ability. So, but anyway, this is close enough for government work. So the stick, the way it leans, has to go true north. Use a compass for that. At the end of the shadow, mark it every 15 minutes, okay? And after each time you mark it, then you can put a stick across here or a rod across here, and it will point to east, and the other end will point to west, okay? The sun's coming up. It's 9 a.m. So we've got a good shadow right there. And so that's kind of the way that works. And it's a very interesting process. And I put this plate pretty much center of this table right here. And I made a circle around that plate because what I'm going to do after I get the hours of the day on here, I'm going to write down on this table the hours of the day, and I'm going to probably drill a hole in the center of this table at an angle, that 30-degree angle, and put a stick like this in there, and that way I'll have my own sun clock on this table itself. And if you turn the table a different direction and you want to see what time it is, then you would just take your compass and find true north and turn your table until your stick, where it's leaning at, is pointing to true north. Okay, your stick is leaning this way. If you turn it this way, that's not north. That's more toward northwest. Okay, so you would be pointing that stick to north, and it'll give you your time again. And so that's the important part there. Okay, so we'll see how this goes, and it's a very simple process. But if you're ever stranded in the woods, get in a clear area where the sunlight can hit you, and again, all you're going to be doing, even if you're not trying to tell the time, is put a stick in the ground like this, and you know your latitude. Just kind of eyeball it 30 degrees, like 11 o'clock in this case, instead of 12 o'clock straight up. And just make a mark at the end of the shadow. On the ground, you'll be putting a small stick in the ground for each end of the shadow. And within an hour, you'll know exactly where that line goes from here to the end of the shadow. Within an hour, you'll know exactly which way is east and which way is west, okay? And then you just put a line between it, and you'll be able to know north and south. So it's a good way to make your compass if you don't have one. Okay, and that's kind of how simple this is. Okay, guys, what I want to show you is that, remember, I was talking about marking the end of the shadow from your stick right here in the middle, and right here at the very end of the shadow, that's where you mark it at. Okay, so when it was 10 a.m. I started marking it every 15 minutes. We started off at 9. And the first time I marked it here, like, was 15 minutes, waited 15 minutes, marked it, the end of the shadow hit here. And then 15 minutes later, the end of the shadow hit here. And then later, the end of the shadow hit here. Okay, and that was between 10 and 11 a.m. So I was just marking the very end of the shadow, the very end of it. So by marking the very end of the shadow, you see it's kind of a straight line right here on this table right here. Now, if you're doing this on the ground, you just use a twig to stick in the ground. So we take a rod that's kind of straight, and this rod here is pretty straight right here. And we just kind of line it up with these marks right here, okay? So you see how these marks are lined up. So now we take our compass here. So we take our compass here and look at it, and we kind of line it up with this line that we made from the shadow. I think that's pretty straight there. All right, and we look right here, and this is east. It's pointing east. So this line right here from the end of the shadow is pointing to the east. Sun rises in the east, goes to the west, right? So I can't see with the glare on this phone what you can see, but it's right on it, on the east right here, pointing to the east, okay? So that way we know that that way is east, and we know that this way is west and that way is east, and that's really accurate according to our phone here. So if that's the case, we know that if we put a stick right here so that it crosses over and divides this line right here like that, this has to be north, and then down this way has to be south, and that way is east and this is west. So we created a compass, okay, and that way you may have to do that to begin with in order to find true north. That way when you do your sundial, you'll know where north is, because generally you set your plate to the north. So that's how this works, to find your east and west and set up your sundial to point to north and have that 30-degree angle in your stick, because I live at 33-degree latitude here in Georgia, and kind of in line with Atlanta, mid-Georgia. And this is a good bushcraft skill to know, you know, in case you ever get lost and get confused. And this is for the northern hemisphere above the equator. If you are in the southern hemisphere below the equator, then your stick right here will not be pointing 30 degrees this way. It would be pointing backwards, southward instead, depending on what latitude you are there for this to work. Magnetic compasses are off a little bit. Not much, but just a tad. Some people like to make allowances for that. And daylight saving time is the other thing. You got to add an hour to it, or take away an hour. Okay guys, this is pretty much how it's going to look right here. I drilled the table, not all the way through, because I didn't want the genome to fall through it. And so we have our stick right here, and we have our hole right there, and that's drilled at 11 o'clock angle, 30-degree angle right here. And we just stick that in there, and we have our angle right here that we need. And we can shorten this stick right here. It doesn't have to be that long. So you see where that stick at that length shows you the line pretty good though right here, all the way across on the shadow where it ends at. So you don't want it too short either. But this way, you can take this out right here and then use it as you need it. And again, use your compass to point north. So when I come out here and I want to use this, play around with it, this is north right here. So take a compass, line this up with True North, a cell phone with an app, compass app. Put this in right here. And that'll give me, once I line that up, then the shadow should work perfectly all the way around. And see, like 8, the shadow's dead on this line right here at 8 a.m. When it's right here in the middle, between 8 and 9, you know that's 8:30. It's just, if it's in between the 8:30 mark and the 9 o'clock, that's 8:45. So you can make it in increments too. You could put marks there for increments too, if you wanted to do that. So that's how she looks. Thanks for watching, guys. Gary J.